Today, democracy is said to be the most supported political tool for development and social change. Now, worldwide, the acceptability is there at the different tiers of governance. And for those who are students of politics, they want to see equity, justice, rule of law, and the preservation of human rights embedded and also implemented as it ought to be. Now, for 22 years, Nigeria has experienced and had its own uninterrupted democracy with periodic elections. And this has earned the country some beautiful goodwill and accolades here and there for the few stable democracies in Africa. And for us, it has experimented on the different levels and will continue to sustain it despite the inherent challenges, as they say, the teething problems of the steps of those early years. For 22 years, we've produced about 4 democratically elected presidents. Well, of course, we'll recall 1999, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, till about 2007. And of course, late President Elijah Mario Musa Yar'Adua. And thereafter, we had Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. And in 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari also took on the mantle of leadership till date. Now, that's the beautiful form of democracy. The people have gone in and out to actually exercise a right to say this is our own form of government, and would definitely take it to the next level. In the different areas, citizens have participated, and also we've witnessed infrastructure developments. People's rights are also being enhanced under the different administration. Now, all of this can only be experienced under democracy. Now, for some, I believe it's still not all rosy. There are still some tales of woes here and there. Yes, people are saying what next. Despite what we've gone through in 22 years, there are still some gaps, obviously. Issue of insecurity, poverty, and human rights violation are still here for some, and they want to definitely see how we can actually do better. Now, dissenting voices definitely across the country calling for restructuring of the current system of governance. And for some of believe even this kind of democracy, that system of government we're practicing is kind of heavy on the budget and also finance supported. So, as this present administration prepares to mark its 6 years in office, there are issues that will come to mind, and there are success stories, there are the ups and downs, there are the other sides, and those are some of the things that will form our discussion on Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. My name is Blessing Abu. You'll meet my guests in a short while. With me in the studio, I would like to welcome David Akoji. He's the Special Advisor to the Director General, National Orientation Agency. Welcome to the program, Akoji.
Thank you very much for having me.
And joining us via Zoom, we'd like to welcome Michael Saha. He's a Public Affairs Analyst, and it's a pleasure to have you join us as we discuss Nigeria's democracy at 22. That's 22 years of uninterrupted democracy, actually. Welcome to the program, Michael Saha. Okay, let's take on that first aspect of just giving an evaluation, really, for those who witnessed the several years of military rule and the different regime. I'm sure they have something interesting to talk about those years, and also they have different stories to talk about these 22 years of uninterrupted democracy from 1999 till date. Mr. Akoji.
Yeah, I think a good place to start the conversation would be with the economy. World Bank data shows that as at 1999, Nigeria's GDP stood at $59 billion. You know, same data shows that as at 2017 ending, that amount grew 6 times to about $375 billion. Now, question would be, what's responsible for that exponential growth in GDP, in national GDP? Now, what is responsible is investors became more confident in the stability of institutions. And this is characteristic of the civilian government, and is a monumental dividend of these 22 years of uninterrupted democratic journey for us as a people. You know, now if you go away from that and then you begin to look at specifics in terms of development, you know, in technology, for instance, it is within this 22 period of unbroken democracy that we have seen the exponential growth in ICT, you know, in telecoms. You know, Nigerians would recall that in the military era, the telephone was an equipment of privilege. You needed to be very highly privileged, especially the mobile variant, you know, of it. You needed to be highly privileged to own a mobile phone. But thanks to democracy, and these 22 years of it actually, we find that even our children in schools have mobile phones. We find truck pushers, shoe repairers, you know, and the ordinary people in the markets and all over the country are carrying mobile phones. You can hardly measure the impact of that in terms of our social interactions and the economy. Now that growth also occasioned exponential growth in employment, you know, in terms of direct and indirect employment. So that also came, you know, with the advent of democracy. And democracy has also offered leadership learning opportunities to many people. You find that people are contesting elections. The democratic space has become more vibrant. Not to say that all is rosy, as you said in your introduction. But I'm painting this picture because there's always a tendency to focus on the negative, you know. And if you look at our national conversation landscape, there's a lot of negativity going on right now. You know, then it begins to look as if nothing positive, you know, has ever occurred. So I would largely be speaking on the positive side. Not as an acknowledgement that there's no challenges, but also to throw this up, you know, for us to kind of meditate upon.
All right, let's bring in Michael Sarr at this point. Mr. Koji has already taken the dive into the aspects of the growth in the economy and also the flourishing political landscape. But then, I know you're a lawyer, and I'm sure for you, experimenting with these aspects also has to do with what we, the people of Nigeria, decided to agree to with the Constitution to say, okay, yes, we must get back on track to the democratic journey. And so we began in 1999. Now, what for you are the great appraisals that you could point to with what we've seen so far in the political landscape, as well as what we've been able to do as enshrined in the Constitution for the people of Nigeria?
Well, good evening once again, Blessing. And before I launch into answering your question, I just want to say that there is a sense in which NTA focuses on the government of the day and the democratization process without a similar focus on itself. And I think a time has come when we must ask NTA to pat itself on the back and say, for 22 years, we have also contributed to the growth of democracy in this country. So I just needed to place that on the table, Blessing. I'm one of those who watch NTA almost religiously. And I mean, there's room for improvement, but by and large, you have also made significant contributions to the democracy we're enjoying now. And we need to mention this fact, Blessing. I wish I could be as optimistic as David. You know, I am one of those who feel we should also talk about the positive aspects of our growth as a nation, you know, but I'm not quite sure I'll be as optimistic as he is, you know, because the current travels of our country, that our country is going through, really, you know, almost have completely thrown darkness on the 22 years of uninterrupted democracy that we have enjoyed. But it's a fact we cannot take away. And interestingly, Blessing, two things are happening at this time. We just heard about the coup in Mali. You know, it could have been Nigeria, but it's not Nigeria. For 22 years, we have not had that kind of situation. I mean, there are times when we have even been called upon to intervene in situations where democratically elected governments have been pushed away, you know. So that's something that Nigerians should be proud of. Secondly, we're doing this assessment, Blessing, at a time when the National Assembly is leading a process towards the review of our constitution. Again, that we are able to sit together like reasonable people, come around the table and say we want to look at certain aspects of our constitution and consider them for a review, not through the barrel of the gun, not through fights, not through any form of uncivil contestation, is something, again, that we need to celebrate. You know, that we're here on TV with David speaking on issues of democracy, it's something that we cannot take for granted. I'm not quite sure we would have been able to do this if we were under military rule, you know. So the civil liberties that we have enjoyed for the past 22 years, you know, I mean, there is no one would say that there's no room for improvement, but the fact that the democratic space has been created for people to really enjoy the civil liberties that are constitutionally guaranteed is something that we ought to celebrate. That would be my take, Blessing.
Okay, so you kind of still dodged the question, not looking at the constitution, even though you went around it. The evolution to other areas, certainly, germane at this point. People have talked about the different tiers also appreciating one another in terms of even the issue of separation of powers and people having these checks and balances on one another. These opportunities for the governance to actually slug it out as it should be while not tearing each other apart, but still appreciating what each stand for. Let's take a look at that area in terms of governance, whether at the subnational levels or even at the main stream.
Yes, while focusing attention on the positives, I will admit also that we have had serious challenges in these 22 years of democracy at the level of subnational governance, you know, and that's responsible for some of the agitations that you are seeing. It's responsible for some of the disaffection, you know, that's going on and some of the frustration. Those who established our system of governance in their wisdom felt that there should be a federal government, a state government, and then local governments. And powers were given to these various tiers of government along with responsibilities. But you find that today, the local government structure, which is the foundation, you know, and which is the host for the majority of Nigerians, has more or less literally collapsed. There's very little democracy dividend deliverance happening at the local government level. Now, this administration had made some efforts to ameliorate that situation. But we still find that there's a lot of frustration at that level, you know, in terms of delivering rural roads, you know, in terms of delivering basic health, you know, water, primary schools, and things like that, education at that level. There's a whole lot of challenge, you know, at that level. So it would be heartwarming to see improvements. I'm personally, speaking for myself now, glad. I'm glad that local government employees have been embarking on this agitation, you know, for autonomy, you know. And I think that autonomy, if allowed to happen, will lead to improvement, you know, in the delivery of democracy dividends.
Okay, could we have what people, these agitations, I know definitely the clamor to think that everything is rosy at the center is what is always bringing, okay, maybe perhaps this de-emphasis to what should be done at that grassroots level, and all concentration seems to be at the center or at other tiers of governance. How should we actually handle this aspect? Because the frustration will continue to be there if people think nothing really is happening at that lower rung of governance. Or if it's not happening at the center, then definitely I won't be here. So how do we bridge that particular gap? Because once these people, even at the center, actually needs the vote, they get back to those grassroots, supposedly.
True. I think that there are those who argue, Blessing, that the powers that the local government seek, that power of autonomy, that is already embedded in our laws. It's just that some other levels of authority are ignoring those powers. But I think that this constitutional review process offers yet another opportunity, for us to correct whatever had become a stumbling block to the full realization and implementation. The president had passed some executive orders, but I do not know whether those also have the power of law embedded in Constitution. I think not. So perhaps if we criminalize the denial of local governments of the necessary funds, that is required at that level to ensure that development is delivered at that level as intended, in the establishment of local governments, then perhaps we'll begin to see some improvements. And I think the constitutional review process offers some opportunity in that regard. Now, with regards to the issues around the various arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and the misconception, the faulty perception of the ordinary Nigerian as to what the role of each should be. I think this calls for a lot of partnership and enlightenment, especially with the legislature. Nigerians tend to think that legislators at the national and state assemblies should build schools for them, should build hospitals, you understand, and such other amenities that ought to be delivered by the executive by way of them operating the budgets, at these various levels. So I think there needs to be a lot of enlightenment at that level.
Anyway, who's supposed to be doing the enlightenment? I'm sure Noah should be in the know for us when we get back from this break. Michael Tara will come into you after the break because David is owing us the explanation of what Noah is doing actually to enlighten Nigerians. And I'll be coming back to you to take on areas of realizing the implementation of some of those things that are embedded already in the Constitution that we now think it's utopian, really. We'll be right back with Nigeria Today. Welcome back. If you just tuned in, the program is Nigeria Today, and we're taking a look at 22 years of uninterrupted democracy for Nigeria since 1999. And I still have my guest, David Akoji, is here in the studio with me, and Michael Sal is joining us via Zoom. Okay, Mike, before the break, we started talking about aspect of the people knowing what to do, and that's David's role when we'll get back. But realizing and implementing what already has been enshrined in the Constitution, and people are making it to seem as if there are new laws. Legislation, no doubt, will be coming from time to time. Policies will be coming in between. But then, what do we make of Nigerians understanding what is their right and what they're supposed to be demanding of their leaders?
Well, again, let me go back to what David said before I'll launch back on your question regarding the collapse of the local government system in Nigeria. I totally agree with him that the local government system has collapsed. But I guess, again, I agree with him that the constitutional review, the ongoing constitutional review process offers us an opportunity to correct this anomaly. And I say this precisely because, Blessing, if you look at the Constitution and you look at the section that deals, the portion of the Constitution that deals with the exclusive legislative list, in other words, items for which what David refers to as the national government can legislate on or delve into. It is in my view and in the honest view of many Nigerians over bloated. We have a centralized system in such a way that we're running a federal government that seems as though we're in a unitary government. So it is my hope and my expectation that the current constitutional review process will offer us the opportunity to take a second look at the exclusive legislative list and see whether we can pull items from their Blessing and move them into the concurrent list or even the residual list, so that states begin to take greater responsibilities and the national or the federal government is saddled with such responsibilities like defense, and a few other things that it will be more efficiently dealt with. Now, I again agree with David that there is an extremely very limited understanding on the part of the average Nigerian of the role expected of the state and national assemblies. Yes, it is legitimate to expect that the National Assembly or state assemblies will build roads and engage in infrastructure development and all of that, but not as a direct responsibility of these chambers of the legislature, but through the budgetary process. If the National Assembly appropriates sums of money towards the development of, critical infrastructure, they are meeting, the expectation of Nigerians, and it's a legitimate responsibility on the part of the National Assembly. But for Nigerians to think that it's a direct responsibility of the legislature is what I find a little bit disheartening. And it's all out there. Happily, this recommendation is coming from David, who is with the National Orientation Agency, the agency that has the responsibility, to reorientate Nigerians about their expectations from, the various branches of government that we have. And I think for me, really, it's one of the missing links in these 22 years of uninterrupted democracy, Blessing. Our people need to know what is the responsibility of the judiciary, what is the responsibility of the legislature, what is the responsibility of the executive. And it is only when you know the responsibilities assigned to each of these branches of government that you are then in a position to hold them accountable. And that's the second point that seems to me like a missing link in our 22 years of uninterrupted democracy. We are not sufficiently holding public office holders accountable to their commitments and to their responsibilities, Blessing. And I think this is something that we can do effectively only if we get to know, the average Nigerian on the street gets to know that this is what I should expect from the legislature, this is what I should expect from the judiciary, and this is what I should expect from the executive branch of government.
Thank you very much, Mike. They say time actually runs very fast when you're catching up or without the fun. But then with this information we're trying to push across, I'd like Mr. Akoji write this up quickly by way of summing up what agency like NOA and some other institutions that are supposed to be giving the Nigerians the right information on what to do and what to expect of their people and leadership at a time like this.
Okay, I will move on. Very, very quickly answer this question from three perspectives. Okay. The first is this. In 2019, we did a year-long citizens engagement program that took us around this country, and I personally spearheaded that effort. Okay. The idea was to raise citizens' consciousness, and then to get them to understand that democracy does not stop at the point of election.
Goes beyond that.
It goes beyond that.
Okay.
Now,
So that's one.
if you have elected people, you must move quickly and then ensure that they are accountable.
Okay.
That's one. Two, the National Orientation Agency, working with Hallow Mace, an NGO, is partnering with the National Assembly to organize an annual legislative conference. We had one of that last year. We're in the process of getting one. So that partnership between the NOA and the legislature to strengthen citizens' understanding of the role
So it's ongoing now.
is
already.
ongoing, along that line that Mike talked
Talk
about.
Okay.
Yes.
Third one.
The third one is we have engagements with political parties. We have engagements with non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations in the area of enlightening the public, on how to engage, with government and its officials.
Okay. So people need to know, people need to follow up once elections are over, not just because of election, people come
Yes.
around you. You must hold everyone. I'm sorry, Mike, I ought to have come back to take your final word, but I'm at time really. So I'll just wave you and to say happy 22 years of
Happy 22 years of uninterrupted.
uninterrupted. Thank you very much, Michael Tsar. You joined us via Zoom to actually look at this program, 22 Years of Uninterrupted Democracy. Thank you very much once again, Mike. All right, I'd like to also appreciate a special advisor to the Director General, National Orientation Agency, Mr. David Akoji. It's been a pleasure having you join us on the program. And thank you for your insight, too.
Thank you very much.
And happy 22 years to uninterrupted democracy for everyone. Okay, the program Nigeria Today is live every weekday at 7:30 in the evening. You can watch this edition and other edition of the program online at youtube.com/NT News 24 Hub. My name is Blessed Abu. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for watching.